An American F-15 Strike Eagle just fell out of the sky over southwestern Iran. 2 crew members ejected into hostile territory. One was rescued by special forces under fire. The other is still missing as of this recording, hunted by Iranian civilians who were told by state television to capture the enemy pilot alive and claim a reward. An A-10 Warthog sent to help was also hit, forcing its pilot to eject over the Persian Gulf. A Black Hawk helicopter taking fire from armed men with rifles on a dirt road in the mountains. And the President of the United States, the same man who told the nation 48 hours earlier that Iran had no anti-aircraft equipment, that their radar was 100% annihilated, that America was unstoppable as a military force, responded to the shootdown with 3 words: "No, it is war." While that pilot is somewhere in the mountains of Kogaluya province, possibly injured, possibly being hunted by the Revolutionary Guard, possibly already captured despite official denials, the paper price of silver sits at $73.75 per ounce, barely moving, as if nothing is happening, as if the largest energy crisis since the 1973 Arab oil embargo is not unfolding in real time across the Strait of Hormuz, as if the entire architecture of the paper-silver market is not being stress-tested by forces that the algorithms were never programmed to price. Someone is lying to you. And tonight I'm going to show you who, how, and with what specific dollar amounts, timestamps, and blockchain receipts. This is OG John AG, no sponsors, no asset managers whispering buy signals while their compliance department files the opposite trade. No institutional desk analysts whose year-end bonus depends on you staying in a position that benefits their book. Just data, just delivery notices. Just the questions that should be asked by every financial journalist in the Western world, but will not be, because the answers lead back to the same banks that sign the advertising checks. If you are new here, subscribe, because by the time this information reaches mainstream commentary, the positions will already be closed and the profits already booked. Let me start with what the Commodity Futures Trading Commission just announced 3 days ago, because nobody in the silver community is talking about it yet. On the 31st of March, 2026, the new CFTC Director of Enforcement, David Miller, stood at a podium at New York University School of Law and declared 5 enforcement priorities. The first priority, the one he named before market manipulation, before retail fraud, before anti-money laundering violations, was insider trading. Miller said there is a myth spreading through mainstream media and social media that insider trading law does not apply to prediction markets. He called that myth wrong. He said anyone who tips or trades on misappropriated information faces serious consequences. He said the CFTC will aggressively detect, investigate, and prosecute. 3 days later, the Department of Justice confirmed it is already moving. Federal prosecutors from the Southern District of New York have met with representatives of Polymarket to discuss how existing criminal statutes apply to trades placed on that platform. And here is where this intersects directly with the war and directly with silver. Bubble Maps, a blockchain analytics firm, identified 38 accounts that it believes belong to a single individual who netted over $2 million betting correctly on the February 28th strikes against Iran. Every single account was created within days of the bet. Every account placed between 4 and 10 wagers with a near 100% success rate. The cryptocurrency transfers used to fund those accounts began on the 22nd of February, 6 days before the bombs fell. A separate CNN investigation found a single trader who made nearly $1 million from dozens of Iran-related bets over 2 years, with a 93% win rate on wagers exceeding $10,000. A finance professor at Georgia State University reviewed the data and said publicly that a win rate in the 80 to 90% range is too good to be true, either incredible luck or insider trading. Those are his words. And Israel has already indicted 2 of its own military personnel, including a reservist, for using classified information to place bets on Polymarket during previous operations. The blockchain receipts are permanent, the wallet addresses are traceable, the funding paths have been mapped, and the president's own son, Donald Trump Jr., is an investor and paid advisor to Polymarket, while the Trump administration simultaneously dropped 2 federal investigations into the platform that were opened under Biden. Senator Elizabeth Warren organized over 40 Democrats in the House and Senate to send a letter to top regulators and ethics officials demanding training on how prediction markets work. The bipartisan Bets Off Act was introduced in Congress to prohibit platforms from allowing wagers on government actions, terrorism, war, assassination, and events where an individual controls the outcome. And while all of this noise was filling the Senate chamber, Polymarket and Kalshi continued to operate with a combined monthly trading volume that reached $18.3 billion in February 2026, up from less than $2 billion as recently as August 2025. These are no longer fringe platforms. They are major nodes in contemporary finance, and they are running war-based gambling operations while the regulator that is supposed to police them has a dearth of enforcement attorneys according to barons and limited jurisdiction over the offshore platforms where the most egregious trades are placed. Now hold all of that in your mind and look at what happened in the oil futures market on the 23rd of March. The Financial Times documented approximately 6,200 Brent and West Texas Intermediate futures contracts changing hands in a single 60-second window between 6:49 and 6:50 in the morning New York time, $580 million in notional value. 15 minutes later, at 7:04, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that productive conversations were taking place with Tehran. Oil crashed. Equities surged. The position was perfectly placed to profit from both moves simultaneously. No data releases were scheduled. No Federal Reserve speakers were on the calendar. Zero event risk on the docket. Senator Chris Murphy publicly asked whether the trader was Trump himself, a family member, or a White House staffer, and called it mind-blowing corruption. No investigation has been announced. Now let me take you inside the vaults, because the vaults do not care about prediction markets, do not care about political theater, and do not lie. As of the 1st of April, 2026, registered silver in COMEX approved warehouses stands at 76.4 million ounces. That is a 13.1% decline over the past 30 days, 11.6 million ounces withdrawn in a single month. Eligible silver, the metal stored in COMEX vaults but not available for delivery, has fallen to 251.2 million ounces, down 6% over the same period. The metal is not reclassifying from registered to eligible. It is not shuffling between categories. It is leaving the building entirely. Paper silver claims, calculated as total open interest multiplied by 5,000 ounces per contract, stand at 577.7 million ounces. That produces a paper leverage ratio of 7.6 to 1. The delivery coverage ratio has dropped to 13.2%. The estimated depletion clock reads 145 trading days at the current withdrawal pace. Every one of those numbers is publicly verifiable on the CME Group website. And London is mirroring the exact same pattern. The LBMA reported 27,065 tons of silver held in London vaults at the end of February, a 2.4% decrease from January. That is roughly 650 tons of physical silver that left the London vault system in a single month, not reclassified, not moved to a different shelf, gone. But here is the data point that should stop you cold. In the first week of January 2026, 33.45 million ounces of silver were physically withdrawn from COMEX for delivery in just 7 trading days. That was approximately 26% of all registered inventory disappearing in a single week. Many traders were no longer willing to wait for the March contract to settle. They paid premiums to pull their deliveries forward by weeks, insisting on taking physical bars into their own custody as early as possible. When institutional money starts paying extra to take metal off the exchange ahead of schedule, that is not speculation. That is not a trading thesis. That is a statement about trust, or more precisely, a statement about the evaporation of trust in the system that is supposed to guarantee delivery. Now let me show you what is happening in the Strait today, because this is not background noise for silver. This is the ignition switch. The head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, has called the Strait of Hormuz closure the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Before the war, approximately 138 vessels transited the strait daily. As of the 2nd of April, that number was 12. Iran did not need a naval blockade. It did not need underwater mines. It used cheap drones to strike selectively near the waterway, and insurers pulled coverage within days. The World Economic Forum published a detailed analysis on the 2nd of April, identifying 9 critical commodities beyond oil affected by the closure. Nearly half of all global seaborne sulfur trade passes through the strait. Sulfur is the feedstock for sulfuric acid, which is required to refine nickel, cobalt, and copper for electric vehicle batteries and renewable energy storage. 30% of global urea exports originate from the Gulf region. Urea is the world's most widely used nitrogen fertilizer, and its price has jumped 50% since the war began. 1/3 of global seaborne methanol trade flows through the same choke point, and the disruption is hitting during the Northern Hemisphere spring planting season. When farmers cannot access fertilizer, they plant less. When they plant less, food prices rise. When food prices rise, core inflation does not cooperate with central bank projections. The OECD has already warned that headline CPI could jump from 2.4% to 4.2% later this year if energy prices continue climbing. Oil industry executives and analysts are warning that the strait needs to reopen by mid-April, or the supply disruptions will get significantly worse. A geopolitical strategist at BCA Research estimates the world has already lost 4.5 to 5 million barrels per day due to the war, about 5% of global supply, and that number will double by mid-April. making it the largest loss of crude supply in history. The United States and other IEA members have agreed to release 400 million barrels from strategic reserves, the biggest coordinated release on record, and the administration has temporarily lifted sanctions on some Russian and Iranian oil to give the market breathing room. The Philippines has begun a temporary 4-day work week. Pakistan has told citizens to watch cricket from home to conserve fuel. Australia has reported fuel shortfalls at hundreds of petrol stations. Korean Air has entered emergency management mode. Kuwait's international airport was struck by Iranian drones. And CNBC is reporting that if the strait stays closed into the second quarter, oil could spike to $170 per barrel, roughly doubling the impact on inflation and creating a stagflationary shock that could shift everything from the Federal Reserve's path to the outcome of the midterm elections. The Federal Reserve's March dot plot projected only one rate cut for all of 2026, with core PCE revised upward to 2.7%. Those projections were produced before the full Hormuz impact was priced in. If inflation runs at 4% with the Fed frozen at 3.5 to 3.75, real interest rates go negative. And negative real rates are the single most powerful catalyst for precious metals in modern financial history. But I do not serve you only bullish narratives. Your capital deserves the bear case delivered with the same precision. The SLV ETF has hemorrhaged nearly $2 billion in net outflows over the past month. 3-month net outflows exceed $2.4 billion. JP Morgan projects 0 rate cuts this year. A sustained stronger dollar makes silver more expensive for every non-dollar buyer on Earth. If the April 6th deadline produces a deal and the strait reopens, the inflation repricing unwinds overnight. Rate cut expectations return from policy relief, not structural decay. The excess metal that flowed into American vaults during the tariff arbitrage could begin flowing back to London, temporarily easing physical tightness. StoneX analyst Rona O'Connell has noted that scenario explicitly. Bloomberg NEF data shows solar manufacturers are reducing silver loading per cell. Silver demand from photovoltaic installations is forecast to decline 7% year over year to roughly 194 million ounces, even as global solar capacity expands by 15%. Thrifting is real. The industry is actively engineering around the silver price. Anyone who dismisses these counterforces is selling you certainty in a market that does not offer it. But here is what the bear case cannot account for. China reclassified silver as a strategic material and imposed an export licensing framework starting the 1st of January 2026. 44 companies were approved to export silver for the next 2 years. The state-run Securities Times cited an unnamed industry insider saying the policy formally elevates silver from an ordinary commodity to strategic status, placing it on the same regulatory footing as rare earths. New exporters must demonstrate annual production capacity of at least 80 tons and meet ISO 9000 and ISO 14000 certifications. The licensing step means delay is the new denial. Each shipment requires individual approval, and recent precedent with gallium and germanium shows that the nominal 45-day review window stretches much longer in practice. The country that refined and shipped more than 4,000 tons of silver in the first 11 months of 2025 has pulled it behind a bureaucratic wall with no sunset clause. Samsung's all-solid-state battery program uses a silver carbon composite layer as the anode. The batteries achieve energy density of 500 watt-hours per kilogram, nearly double mainstream lithium-ion, 600 miles of range, 9-minute charge time, 20-year lifespan. Samsung SDI, BMW, and Solid Power signed a trilateral validation agreement, with integration into BMW's next-generation evaluation vehicles targeted for late 2026. Each 100 kilowatt-hour battery pack requires approximately 1 kilogram of silver. If solid-state batteries achieve even 20% market penetration across 16 million vehicles per year, that adds roughly 16,000 metric tons of new annual demand, which is approximately 514 million ounces. That is almost equal to current total annual industrial consumption, layered on top of it. The Silver Institute forecasts a 67 million ounce supply deficit for 2026, the 6th consecutive annual shortfall. Total global supply is projected at 1.05 billion ounces, a decade high, and it still cannot close the gap. Supply is structurally inelastic because 70 to 80% of global silver comes as a byproduct from mines that primarily produce copper, lead, zinc, or gold. Silver output cannot be scaled even when prices rise unless the primary metals justify higher production. And the BHP transaction tells you everything about where the world's largest mining company sees this heading. BHP entered the largest streaming transaction by upfront payment in history, receiving $4.3 billion from Wheaton Precious Metals for silver linked to its share of production at the Antamina mine in Peru. When the largest diversified miner on Earth monetizes its silver byproduct at that scale, It is telling you something about where it believes the price of that metal is going over the life of the stream. It is placing a multi-decade bet with its own balance sheet. Sprott Physical Silver Trust doubled its at-the-market equity program to $2 billion in January. At current prices, that is enough to acquire approximately 18 million ounces, representing roughly 16% of total COMEX-registered inventory. A single institutional capital raise capable of absorbing 16% of the deliverable silver on the world's largest futures exchange. Meanwhile, 5-day SLV net inflows have turned positive at $370 million, suggesting a divergence has opened between short-term institutional selling and longer-term accumulation by entities willing to buy the crash. So here is where you stand on the 4th of April, 2026. An American weapons systems officer is missing somewhere in the mountains of Iran. The search and rescue mission itself came under fire from armed civilians shooting rifles at American helicopters from a dirt road. The April 6th deadline is 48 hours away. The UN Security Council vote on defensive force in the Strait of Hormuz is stalled because Russia, China, and France oppose it. Ships are paying $2 million each to transit waters that were free 5 weeks ago. Registered silver in COMEX vaults stands at 76.4 million ounces, with a paper leverage ratio of 7.6 to 1. London lost 650 tons in February. The CFTC just declared insider trading its #1 enforcement priority, while $500 million in war-related prediction market bets remain uninvestigated. And the institution that closed it short at the exact bottom of the worst silver crash in 44 years is still sitting on over 750 million ounces of physical metal, while publishing research telling clients silver should average $81 this year. The spot price says $73.75. The depletion clock says 145 trading days. The delivery records say the pace of physical withdrawal is accelerating, not decelerating. The Strait says 12 ships a day, where there were 138. The fertilizer market says 50% price increases during planting season. The CFTC says insider trading is priority #1 but has not charged a single American. And somewhere in Iran, an armed group of civilians is searching the mountains for an American service member, while the country that sent him there tells the world it has already won. One of these stories is true. The paper price or the vault drain. The press conference or the delivery truck backing up to a warehouse in Perth Amboy at 2 in the morning. The algorithm or the bar being pulled from a rack, stamped, weighed, and loaded onto a pallet bound for an address that does not appear on any public filing. When the deadline passes, when the Strait either opens or does not, when the Fed either cuts or does not, and when the institutions that engineered the January flush decide they have loaded enough metal, the repricing will not arrive on a Bloomberg terminal. It will arrive in a delivery notice, it will arrive in a margin call going the other direction, and it will arrive to a market where 145 days of registered silver stands between the largest paper leverage ratio in modern history and the physical reality that every solar panel, every semiconductor, every solid-state battery prototype, every data center power bus, and every AI chip fabrication line on Earth requires a metal that the world is consuming faster than it can mine, faster than it can recycle, and faster than the vaults can refill. If you made it to this sentence, you are not here by accident. You are not scrolling. You are the reason this channel exists. You read the delivery reports. You count the bars leaving the building. You watch the January crash, and instead of panicking, you asked who was on the other side of the trade. That question is your edge. Do not let anyone take it from you. If this video earned your time, hit the like button. Share it with one person who still thinks the screen price tells the whole story. Subscribe if you have not already, and drop OG John AG 2.0 in the comments below. Not because the algorithm rewards it, because when the next viewer scrolls into this video and sees that phrase repeated 1,000 times, they know instantly that this community does not trade on headlines. It trades on data, it watches vault reports, it verifies every claim, and it stays until the last word. Invest with logic, never with noise. OG John AG, signing out.